1, 2, 3. We want to welcome everybody to the Mom and Dad Talks, where our favorite two people are Mom and Dad. And today we have my dad, we have my other mom, Hantie, we have the Blantons, we have my Aunt Sharon, Mom and Dad, Aunt Sharon. Aunt Sharon, say hello to everybody, please.
Hello. Hi. Greetings from Alabama.
By way of now, Michigan. And then we have my Aunt Hantie, my other mother. Hantie, say something. We're just gonna wave today.
Say something.
There we go. That works out good. And then we have the Blantons. I know they're on mute right now. Blantons, you want to say something real quick?
We just want to say hello.
Being here.
All right. And today, everybody, I have a very special guest. His name is Nick, who has an amazing story. And I'm going to start out with the question here, Nick. First of all, we have a mutual friend that we're really tight with, whatever. But it's amazing how you, and I'm going to lead up to this. We have a good friend. His name is Dr. Eric Thomas. Nick, how did you get to know Dr. Thomas? How did you get introduced to him? Just talk about that.
So like I said, basically, it was some time ago. I was cleaning in an apartment that I had some years ago. And I was listening to a Christian rapper by the name of Bizzle. And basically an Eric Thomas episode had come on Pandora, like a little music skit. So that's where I really started listening to him. Then I started following him very intensely, YouTube, Pandora, things like that. And then I ended up going out to a retreat that I knew he was going to with Jamal King and Make Real Estate Real. And I actually met him in person in Mexico. And that's where we actually started to just communicate and build a relationship and so on.
No, but it's more than just that, because that's how we got introduced. Because E called me up and said, man, meet my man Nick. So I'm like, anybody down with E is down with me. And I met Nick, but Nick, when I heard your story, I really think our listeners need to understand where you came from, and we'll see how far we can get to, because I know they're gonna want to bring you back here. Let's start from there, man. How did you grow up, and then how did you get to meet the Lord? Let's talk about that.
Okay, so I'll start with the jaw dropping information that people usually get stuck with. My mother was a prostitute, and my father, he was a pimp. And I grew up, I'm biracial. I'm half black and half white. My father's from down south, Montgomery, Alabama. My mother is from Worcester, Massachusetts. Both of them were alcoholics and drug addicts. Both of them were convicted felons. And that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. It was very heavy. Everything from drugs and alcohol to violence, to abuse, negative street life, pimping and prostitution, guns, drugs, all types of things. Those are the things that I was surrounded by as a youth. So that's the start of things. I kind of grew up, my dad was going in and out of prison. I grew up in and out of foster homes. I would run away from foster homes. I was homeless. I slept out on the street. I slept in people's cars. I would climb up onto people's Porsches so that the animals on the ground couldn't get me. Things like that. I started going to DYS locker facility, getting in trouble. And then ended up going to jail as soon as I was old enough to go at the age of 17. And then by the time I was 22, I ended up getting a 15-year minimum mandatory sentence out in Massachusetts for trafficking cocaine. And I also had a gun charge as well.
Wow. So life really was against you. And according to stats and statistics, we shouldn't even be talking right now, because technically speaking, you would just be getting out. But tell about that experience, man. And then I'm going to turn it over to the other people ask questions. What happened to turn that around?
So I went into prison at 22 years old. I was charged with attempted murder for a shooting. What really, they kind of twisted the story about what happened. But basically, an individual, when I was 22 years old, my baby sister was sexually molested by my mother's boyfriend. I went to the house with a firearm that I should have never had, to try to scare him out of the house. He ran out the back door. one of his best friends, who happened to be the landlord of the building, he intervened. He tried to attack me with a 2x4, and then he ended up getting shot 3 times in the legs. And so, but for whatever reason, they charged me with attempted murder as if I tried to kill him. So I was 22 years old. Now at 22 years old, when people are that age and they go into prison or jail, they probably had only been involved in a negative street life maybe for a few years. Maybe they started at the age of 18 or 19 in a negative street life. But me, at the age of 22 years old, I had already had 15 years going in and out of the system. At the age of 20, I started at the age of 8. My first crime was at the age of 8, breaking and entering. And basically that was my life. That's what I knew. That's what I was surrounded by. My father's sister shot and murdered an individual. I have a brother who was 10 years older than me. He had 2 murders on his record. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, because the first brother, he was like a half brother. But my other brother, who was 2 years older than me, he had gotten shooting when he was 17 years old. He did 11 years in prison. So this is just the stuff that I was surrounded with. So to go to the change, when I was 22 years old and I went into prison, I was tired. I had done 15 years of just going in and out of the system. And I was tired, and I called out to God, and I just said, like I'm done with this. They were threatening me with about 20 to 30 years in prison. And I was just done. And I said, God, whatever you want, I'll do it. So I ended up getting sentenced to a 15-year minimum mandatory sentence. In that time when I was in prison, what minimum mandatory means is that you can't get good time. You can't get early parole. You can't get probation. You have to do the whole 15 years day for day. And so I started my journey just serving God, learning about God, reading the Bible. I would witness to other inmates, tell them about Jesus Christ. I even got in the middle of individuals who are going to have a knife fight, and stood in the middle of them. And because of the respect that they had for me as somebody who they saw, who was actually trying to change his life, and who they saw, try to walk as a man of God would walk. They backed off. 2 individuals, they were of different race, and it was a white guy and a black guy, and they were going to go at each other with knives. And I literally just jumped in the middle of the 2 of them, and because of their respect for me, they backed off. And so I'm in prison, and I'm getting closer with God, and I'm learning my Bible. I'm praying, I'm reading, I'm fasting, and I'm just sharing the word of God with the individuals. And that's what I did for the first 8 years of my sentence. I put in motions to try to get out. I put in motions. I put in appeals in the court system, try to get out. But every motion was denied. Every appeal was denied. And then one day, the law just changed. And the law that changed specifically applied to my case. So to make a long story short, God gave me back 7 years of my life. After getting out of prison, I graduated from one of the top 20 colleges in the country, Boston University. I started a small business, which then led me to learn more about business and things like that. Now I own 4 small companies, 2 of which are netting 6 figures annually. One of them will be experiencing its first year in the 7-figure club. So God has really changed my life around. He's brought me a far way. He's preserved me. When I look at my childhood, when I look at the things that I've experienced, the times that I was almost killed, there was a gentleman shooting at my father while I sat in the passenger seat, and all the bullets were going through my door, the passenger side door. I was 6 years old, and the bullets were going through the passenger door right where I sat. And God preserved me. God saved my life. And so one of the things as I experienced all the suffering, I from a child, the abuse, everything the environment that I was in, I used to ask God as I was a child, like, how could you allow one person to experience all of this? How can you allow one single person, one child, to go through all of this hurt and all of this pain? And God would always tell me the same thing. I would hear him very clearly. He would say that, your pain had a purpose. and that your life is more important than yourself, and that there are people out there who need to hear you and hear your story and see what I can do with somebody like yourself. So yeah.
Nick, man, because really this doesn't serve it justice, because you got
Right.
even more than this. I'm definitely going to bring you back, but I'm going to turn it over to my mom and dad, and anybody else on the panel have any questions for my man Nick before we get off.
I have a question, Nick. I
Sure.
know you a really horrible life. You probably answered this already, but was there anybody in particular, even when you were small, that kind of where you saw another side of life, knowing that there must be something better than what I'm doing? Was it a church? Was it a teacher? Was it somebody else that passed through your life that may have had, other than the Holy Spirit, the help you get back on that road?
So I wish I could say that. What I can say is that two people did try. They made an effort. It was a baseball coach who was a white man, and a teacher of mine. She was also white, and she cried. She said in the 15 years that she had been teaching, no student had ever completed every single assignment that she had ever given out. And I did that. But because they were white, I'm just going to be honest, because they were white, because they came from different backgrounds. The information they try to share when they try to say, Nick, you could do better, or you need to change the direction of your life. The information went in one ear and out the other, because I just felt you don't know me. You don't know where I've come from. You don't know what I'm going to go home to today. And so I went home to a lot of abuse, but it's funny because what kind of may answer your question, there were little things that God was doing in my life as I was a child. Like they were weird, like to somebody else, they may not seem like special things. When I was a little kid, I could draw very, very well. When I was like the fastest kid in my school, I could run track. I could do backflips. Like in the hood, the kids who do backflips, like, and we didn't have parents who spent money to send us to gymnastics school. So I could do backflips. So why am I sharing this information? At a young age, there were things that God was doing that, like, I would feel unique. I would feel special, right? And here I am, I'm 42 years old now. These crimes and things that I committed were over 20 years ago. But what I noticed is that God kept kind of whispering in my ear, Nick, you're better than the trash that you're surrounded by. You're better than the environment that you're in. And so I constantly grew up feeling like I was special, feeling like I was unique. But I was struggling to figure out how and where and why and all this other stuff. So there was things that was happening to me. And a lot of that had to do with God, kind of just whispering and trying to give me little hints that I am better than, the messed up environment that I was born into.
Okay. That was great.
So Nick, man, like I said, I'm going to take one more question. If anybody has any more questions before we get off, because number one, Nick, I appreciate your honesty, and people don't understand, don't give up on helping people or trying to reach people, because God doesn't. And God can talk to Abraham was a heathen folk. When God talked to him, he didn't know God, but yet God still came to him and responded. And Nick, seeing you respond to the calling on God's life at your moment is just a remarkable witness of God's power, bro. And seeing your life do a 180, man, not 360, a 180. I mean, it was a powerful witness to myself and my dad. And we sat down with you and my wife. We all sat down with you. And like I said, Dad's like, when we going to have Nick on the show? We're going to have Nick on the show. So before we get off, Dad, is there anything you want to say, Dad, real quick before? Because we're going to bring Nick back. But you have any other things you want to ask Nick before we get off?
Nick, what would be your advice to any young person that was in your situation?
There's a better way. There's a better way. And the reason why I want to share with you, right, is because I didn't listen to the people who tried to point me in the right direction because I felt that they couldn't relate to me. And so now here I am saying to that person who's going down the wrong road, I can say I relate to you. I can say I've been down that road. I can say that there's actually a better way, and that way is God. And there's a whole better life on the other side. Today, I'm married. I just had my only girl. She's about to be 2 years old. The life I live today is such an amazing life, and there is hope. There is hope, and if you put in the work, and if you surround yourself with the right people, anything is possible.
Well, like I said, folks, I'm gonna bring Nick on because Nick has a more amazing story, folks, than this. I'm telling you, folks, Nick, we're gonna bring you back on the show, and like I said, folk, he's an amazing person. And Nick, if you want him to speak at your place, is there any way they can contact if people want you to come to their church or different place or anything like that, Nick?
Yeah, the easiest way would be email, so that everybody, instead of spelling out my name, my email would be the word professionally affordable at gmail.com. That's the simplest way. But I'll also, get some easier information so that you can contact me. But for right now, it would be that you can email me at the word professionally affordable at gmail.com.
All right, Nick. Thank you for coming on the show, and thank everybody for being on the show for today. Till next time, we'll see you next week on Mom and Dad Talk. We'll actually have another special guest, folks. Great job.